On today's show, coming off a tough loss to the Maple Leafs, the Capitals hope to rebound and have a winning West Coast trip.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals look to rebound and clean things up after they come off what Spencer Carbery said was a disgusting game. How did they turn it around, and what did we learn at today's practice? I'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about Lars Eller makes his return. That was the big news that I spoke about a couple days ago. Well, he was on the ice at practice and looks to be in the lineup as the Capitals head out west. And then a little bit later, I'll talk about the outlook for Sonny Milano. But just to get it going here, it was a rough loss. Make no mistake about it, as the Capitals fell to the Toronto Maple Leafs, a game that they definitely should have won. They had the lead, a good lead going into the third period and almost all the way through the third period until the wheels fell off later in the game. But there were signs a bit earlier in the game that it seems like they were becoming a little bit disjointed, that plays were getting misread and missed assignments, those kind of things. Things need to change, and we saw a bit of that change in Spencer Carbery's thoughts on what he thinks needs to change at Thursday's practice. So it was tough, a 4-3 loss in OT. Again, I was hoping that they could keep things going, but like I say, all good things must come to an end. The team held a brief practice today, and it was ultimately all about regrouping and refocusing, because the important thing is not to dwell on what went wrong. We know it was a tough loss. We know the wheels fell off, but you can't keep dwelling on that. You have a bunch of games coming up on the West Coast against some tough teams that if you don't take them seriously, or you're too distracted upon past failures, then I think you're going to fail yet again. And I think it was just a team that just lost its way. I'm not going to read any more into it than it was a bad game for the Capitals towards the end of the game. But I think Spencer Carbery and his assistants have the team going in a good direction. Spencer Carbery took the reins during practice today, leading the team and looking at footage from the game, almost like the Zapruder film, taking a look at what went wrong frame by frame by frame to decide what happened, what needs to change before this weekend's games. And I don't think there were a lot of problems. I think that the problems were more plentiful later in the game, but I think it's something that they can clean up, because all things told, this season, the Capitals have played that much better. I don't think that one loss of this nature totally derails their progress. And it was a practice today talking about key errors and missteps that led to the loss in OT to the Maple Leafs. And one thing is glaringly apparent is you never want to underestimate your opponent. The Maple Leafs have the firepower, and they will expose you. They will capitalize on any errors that you make and make you pay. And that is what they did against the Caps. It was a critical moment for the players. They needed to reestablish the rhythm and revisit the fundamentals that had propelled them earlier in this year's victories. And I think that's what it's important about, taking a look at the footage. That's what went wrong. Here's what's worked well for us overall this year. Let's get back to that. let's not be too hard on ourselves over one loss. I think that it's easy to point fingers and cast blame, but at the end of the day, it was just an off game. So Spencer Carbery and his mindset, what's really noteworthy is Carbery's approach. He has a way with the young players. I think he also has a good rapport with the experienced players. And the one thing I know is abundantly clear is that he cares a lot. When you saw him on the bench, his jaws clenched. He's yelled. He looks disgusted. He wasn't also afraid to give it to the refs, to give him those refs a piece of his mind either. That's what we love about Coach Spencer Carbery. His goal today ultimately wasn't to fire the team up or elicit a strong response. Instead, he aimed for a productive skate that would help this team regain its focus and keep the positive momentum that's got them to this point right now. Defying odds. Again, if you're an everydayer of the show, I've talked about this team defying odds, all the insiders panning them. My fellow Locked On host saying, we don't know how to tell you, but the Capitals aren't going to make it to the playoffs. Well, guess what? All but one of those teams aren't even in contention right now. So it kind of just shows you how sometimes people can be wrong. So all things considered, you take a look at how the Capitals played on Thursday. And, you take a look at the losses throughout the season thus far. It comes to mind the Lightning game, the first game against the Devils. And some of them were tougher losses than others. Those are just the ones that come to mind. There haven't been a lot of losses for the Capitals this season. So I think it's important to gain a perspective. There are some teams out there right now that aren't playing very well at all. And that's not a good example to look at. But all things told, this team is in a much better position. And why are they in a much better position? Rock solid head coach, assistants, and some key acquisitions that were made in the offseason with Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Mangiapane, Duhaime, Radish, Chychrun, Roy, Logan Thompson. Can you believe we're even talking about all these big pieces that the Capitals picked up? And it's due in large part to what? Kuznetsov's contract falling off the books. It's due to TJ Oshie and Nick Backstrom being on LTIR that it gave the Capitals some flexibility to truly make this team better. Because if you take a look at it, it was a rough loss, and things this season have been going very well. Could you imagine if the Capitals did not have that flexibility to pick up those key players? Say Kuzi was still here and TJ Oshie was limping around on the ice. This team is in a good position, and we're coming up on some mile markers, if you will, and Thanksgiving is one of them, and it's pretty indicative of where your team will be. Will they be playoff contenders, yes or no? And you can kind of gauge your team. If you want to take a look at the Capitals last season at the Thanksgiving break, they were in second place, and well, the wheel wobbled for them and they barely made it to the playoffs. But if the Capitals can maintain their style of play, I would say now, even through the Thanksgiving break, you're going to see what this team is made of and encouragement. And from Thursday's practice, I think they are going to clean up any loose ends, and the Capitals will hit the ground running on this upcoming West Coast trip. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Lars Eller's return to practice. I'll discuss next. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it is really that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. There you'll see right now 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your own phone number along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month with mintmobile.com/lockedonnhl. $45 upfront, payments required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional tax, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for more details. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gift site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with the promo code NHL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NHL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NHL. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find this show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So some excitement at Thursday's practice as Lars Eller was back at practice. Excitement, again, to kind of summarize this season. A lot of things I didn't see coming. You know, a change at GM, the Capitals buying cap friendly, Jacob Vrana returning to the team, some big offseason acquisitions. Well, falling in step with that was the return of Lars Eller, which was Mr. Clutch in the 2018 Stanley Cup win. Excitement, and to bring some stability to that third line that, let's be honest, has struggled. Lapierre hasn't been his season. What's the long-term plan for him? It's a bit murky right now. Scarbosa also had a kick at the can, all things considered, pretty good. But if you can get an upgrade, why not do it? The GM of the Penguins said that most any player on their roster was up for grabs, except for Sidney Crosby. So Chris Patrick said, really? Called him up, and well, next thing you know, the Capitals got Lars Eller for 2 draft picks. All things considered, really great, a good upgrade, and potentially, ostensibly, is going to solidify that third line. So let's talk about some lineup changes. Lars Eller is back, baby, with the team for the first time since being reacquired on Tuesday. He's stepping in the role of third-line center, replacing Hendrix Lapierre. So, again, there were some questions and still are a lot of questions on that third line. We know, and I'll talk about in the next segment about Sonny Milano, but is Jacob Vrana, is his play going to be sustainable? The lines at practice today were Ovi, Strome, Protas on the top line. First line, no surprise, McMichael, Dubois, and Tom Wilson on the second. Mangiapane, Lars Eller, and Jacob Vrana on the third line. And fourth line, Duhaime, Dowd, and Radish. So all things are good with Dowd, as there was a bit of a scare. First pairing, Chychrun, Carlson. Second, Faravari, Roy. Third pairing, Sandin and Trevor Van Riemsdyk. And TVR, far exceeding my expectations as well. Really a pleasant surprise. So this change is exciting for the team dynamics, and it's exciting for me as a longtime fan and all of you that are listening and watching as well, as I don't think there's anyone out there that has a negative thing to say about Lars Eller. a truly great player, and the Capitals, I think, got lucky. He wants to come back here. He still has a home here. Max Pacioretty lived in it for a little bit. It is a perfect scenario. And Spencer Carbery as well was optimistic about adding Eller and that he'll bring some much needed stability to that line, which, let's be honest, has had its share of uncertainty at the start of the season. The hopes, to circle back on Lapierre, were high. It's a bit of a different Lapierre this year than the previous year, not in a good way. Like Alan May said yesterday before the game, that he's not moving his legs, and that's part of it. I just think that he's not totally dialed in. That is the tough part. And, like I say, his long-term plan, Hendrix Lapierre, that is, I guess that's a bit up in the air. But I think the Capitals are in an excellent position right now for this trip coming up. As long as there's no injuries that we hear, oftentimes you'll hear injuries and you're like, injured? They didn't even play yesterday. But as long as this team is as is, I think this is the best Capitals team we've seen out on the ice in a long time. And there is a sense of optimism in me, even though sometimes I'm a bit of a pessimist at the end of the day, that I feel optimistic about this team. And yes, even coming off a loss like that, I am feeling very good about this team. It's the nostalgia vibes, all those kind of things. So I'll talk here briefly about Sonny Milano being not at practice and is currently listed as week to week with an upper body injury. That is definitely something to keep an eye on. And I'll go a little bit more into depth in the last segment. But as the Caps get ready to face off against the Avalanche on Friday, let's hope they come out strong. Positive momentum. This team, a lot like other teams, play very well when they jump out to a lead early. Of course, I'll keep you guys updated on Locked On Capitals, your team every day. But excitement, is this team for real? I'm believing it, even though people are saying it's just a mirage in a desert, that this team is not as great as it's penned out. I think they really are. And Capitals fans, there is a lot to be excited about. To see Eller return, like I said, with those nostalgia vibes, I think it just brings some comfort and familiarity to players like Tom Wilson, Alex Ovechkin, those kind of things, that to know guys out there and what they're made of, I think that puts the Capitals in a truly great position. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Sonny Milano, a guy that has definitely not got off to a great start. What is the long-term plan, and is he truly injured? Yes, I said it. Is he truly injured? The team said he is. I'll discuss straight ahead. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place on the NFL. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And there is a lot of football that's played on any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday, and some of those games you're more into, say it's the Ravens or the Commanders, but maybe they're not playing. Open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, they got all that much more exciting. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. Next, talking about Sonny Milano and what do the Capitals do with Mr. Milano, a guy that came to this team originally, if we want to rewind time a little bit, and his projection was to play on the Bears. Got an opportunity to play with the Capitals, and looking back at my old notes, what I said was, has a good nose for the puck. Good playmaker. Have not seen a whole lot of that this season. And very limited ice time this year. In the last game that he played, he only had 5 minutes, 30 seconds of ice time. And head coach Spencer Carbery was very candid in saying, looking at it, he hasn't really had a fair shake that he's only had 5 minutes, 30 seconds of ice time. So the plan was to get him some more ice time. And then all of a sudden we hear about an injury. Where are the Capitals at with Sonny Milano right now? So the Caps, as we know, are headed out on a West Coast road trip, and Sonny Milano will not be making the trip. He has been sidelined for the past 3 games to an upper body injury. This upcoming trip will see the Caps face the Avalanche and the Golden Knights, and also they'll get a chance to see Utah. I missed that in my notes as well. So it'll be an exciting thing to see. And just to understand the timeline here, Carbery has labeled Sonny's condition as week to week. So is this to get a longer look at Jacob Vrana? I know there are certain roster concerns. So is that what's really going on here? His injury followed an injury he sustained, on November 6th during a game against the Nashville Predators. It's interesting to note, and this is where the conspiratorial part of me comes out, is that Milano seemed fine throughout the game, but after drawing an interference penalty in the first period, he didn't return for the final 10 minutes of play. And it's interesting, and some people say that doesn't happen, Dan. It doesn't. I'm here to tell you it does happen. That I've heard in a post-game presser. I want to say it was Alex Ovechkin from a couple years ago, where they said, "Are you going to be in the game?" And we hear you're injured, and they ask him about the injury, and he's like, "I don't know. What did they tell you?" That sometimes there are wink, wink, nod, nod injuries that might be true and might not be true. But I think at the end of the day that they see Sonny Milano as a bit of a liability. Now, if he's injured, it's a bit ambiguous. I'm not saying that he's not injured. I'm just saying that it is interesting. That is what I'll say. But there's been challenges for Sonny Milano getting reintegrated. The injury is particularly frustrating for Milano, who is just starting to find footing in the lineup, but hasn't dazzled. I think that's what the Capitals are looking for, someone to dazzle them. This is a year that the Capitals pushed all their chips in. I think there's a feeling in the air that we want the best product on the ice. And after a challenging preseason, he made his debut in the Capitals home opener, but found himself as a healthy scratch for 9 games. That definitely will stunt or stymie your growth. This stretch was tough to watch as he was replaced by Jacob Vrana. And that was one of the players that I heard when he's on a PTO. If you're an everydayer of the show, you know I said that who's going to be the odd man out, kind of the whiff in the air, was Sonny Milano. And it was getting more and more apparent. I put Vaseline under my nose like someone going into a crime scene, but it was still very apparent that it was going to be Sonny Milano out. Just didn't bring it in the preseason. And it's not about, like I've said, it's not about show business. It's not about show happy. It's show business. It's about the winning brand of Capitals hockey and not squandering the last 2 seasons of the Ovi era. I know that is getting an extreme 30,000-foot view of a singular issue, but it is. That's what it's all about. And as a GM, I think that ultimately that is where their head is at. His return against the Hurricanes on November 2nd was promising, yet we've only seen him play 2 games before this setback. So at the end of the day, I'm pulling for him. I want nothing but the best for Sonny Milano. Seems like a great guy, a great guy. I'm not looking for great guys on the team. I'm looking for competitors. But, if he has a future, whether it be with the Capitals or the Bears or another organization, I wish him nothing but the best. But the one thing I know, it's been a rough start for Milano. The injuries and the lineup changes have undoubtedly restricted his ability to contribute as he had hoped. And sometimes that's the case. Sometimes you play a little bit poor. Sometimes you get injured, and the next guy up, well, he swoops right in and takes your job. Ultimately, kind of what has happened here with Sonny Milano. Unfortunate for sure, but it is what it is. And the one thing that I know if he continues to be on the team, in whatever capacity that might be, that injuries are a common occurrence. There is the possibility that a forward could get injured, and very well might. That would be another opportunity for Sonny Milano to swoop in and make the most of their opportunities. The question, however, is how much patience will they have for Sonny Milano? And do they want to view him as expendable? What's his value? Those kind of things. Probably not real great, but I'm going to view him at the end of the day as a good depth piece. Like I say, just knowing that injuries are inevitable in the NHL season. But at the end of the day, this team is poised to do great things. And I think on the third line in particular, Vrana, Eller, and Mangiapane are the best option available. Regardless of feelings, that's the way it is. And I hope that that's enough. I think that Eller is going to be enough to help push this team up over the top and do some truly great things. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast. And it's in audio and video form. And I want to thank all of you that are listening on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. And when you're done here for your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.